Hi, this is Mr. LeBlanc with some answers for the questions that my students have about the Catholic tradition. And this student has a question. They would like to learn about popes and why we have them. So the Pope as the leader of the Catholic Church. One of the things that this student is questioning is, I've never really understood the popes because you're not supposed to idolize anyone other than God, and people pray to the Pope, but I don't understand that. Great question, and it's really important to ask that question because, number one, you're absolutely right. We shouldn't idolize anyone. Our Catholic Christian faith teaches us that God alone is God, and we should only worship, serve, obey, love God above all things with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our strength. So it's all about God in the person of Jesus Christ with the Father and the Holy Spirit. We only worship God. You're right, it's not right to idolize a human being. That is, to take a human being and to treat them as if they were God, or as if they were in the same place as God. And one of the things about, the Pope does not do that. The Pope is not trying to be someone who is as high as God, and never has been. And that's been really clear in the Catholic tradition. There have been some times when allegiance, or rather the respect that we give to the Pope is misunderstood. And so what we understand the Pope to be, first of all, the Pope is actually just the title that we give to the Bishop of Rome, the Bishop of the city of Rome. And that title, or that important place of the Bishop of Rome, goes right back to ancient times, because we believe, or we understand, that Peter and Paul, both of the great apostles, they both lived in Rome at the end of their lives and led the church in Rome until they were martyred, until they were killed out of hatred for the faith. So because Peter and Paul lived there, because Peter was such a leader among the apostles, because Paul wrote most of the New Testament, wrote a lot of the New Testament, and was such a profound teacher, when any of the other apostles or the other communities that weren't in Rome, when they had a problem that they couldn't solve, they would look to Rome, and they would ask whoever was leading the diocese of Rome, whoever was leading the Church of Rome, what should we do about this? So in other words, for the most part, the churches were able to worship God and live together and pray together, but every once in a while they'd run into a problem that was just dividing the community. One group of people wanted this thing to happen, and maybe the leaders wanted something else to happen. So was the leadership flawed, or was the group of people who were demanding this, were they actually asking for something that was unreasonable? When a local church couldn't come up with a solution, they would write letters, or they would ask for advice from the leader of the church in Rome. And after Peter and Paul, the successors to those great apostles, they would be called bishops, and they would govern, they would look after the whole church. They would only do that because they had listened so attentively, and because they had been so diligent and also exceptional in their service to the whole people, and to also listening to the teaching of the apostle, to Peter, right? So the tradition grew up that, because the churches had this tradition of looking to Rome to solve a problem, that continued and basically the authority of the Bishop of Rome kind of grew out of that the Pope eventually not only received problems as they came up, but also would kind of would be able to say something on behalf of all of the churches to say, this is something that we need to do to avoid a problem later on. This is something, so one of the things that the Pope did was translate the Bible into Latin, which was the language that people spoke at that time. And so the Pope took care of that, and then had it done well, and had it done in a way that would serve the church. And then he was able to say, this is the edition of the Bible that is trustworthy and is actually a faithful translation from the Hebrew and the Greek. So that's just one example. So the Pope's authority really has to do with caring for, the church in Rome, but because we're spread out throughout the world, is to care for the church throughout the world, to give teaching and to give guidance in a way that kind of keeps us all on track to walking together in a good way. So to recap, Catholics do not idolize the Pope. We do not confuse the Pope with God. But one thing that we do see is that God has given us leaders in the church. God has given us the Pope to help us follow Jesus more faithfully. And that's a great blessing for us. And that's why we really rejoice and appreciate the work of the Pope. And we also listen carefully to what he has to say. We listen carefully to how he interprets the scriptures and how he teaches the faith to us, so that we can be confident that we're following in the tradition that Jesus left to the apostles, and that has been passed down to us. Thanks so much for the question. I hope to see you for the next one.